Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Behind the Struggle podcast. I'm here joined by two very special guests. I have returning guests, my friend JP, and my brother, Michael. Guys, please introduce yourselves for our audience.
JP, I was on your last podcast, I think. We had a great time, even though my audio was messed up.
I'm Michael, Chris's younger brother. Um, in to talk about some good topics involving hip hop, entertainment at large. I have absolutely no background professionally in hip hop in entertainment at all, but I'm a consumer like everybody else is, and I consume these goods that these artists put out, and I'm glad to have a platform to be able to talk about it. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, not a problem. And you know what, Mike? You are definitely one of the people I wanted to get for today's episode. Today, we're going to talking about the man,
Elephant in the room.
the legend himself, Kanye West. And look, I know we're getting to this a little bit late, guys. Had some difficulties with scheduling, but better late than never. So, to kind of give you guys a little bit of a recap, this is what's been going on with Kanye. Kanye has been dropped by Adidas, Balenciaga, Creative Artists Agency, which is a talent agency. Foot Locker was told to remove Yeezy products from display and cease selling them, which I think is going to be temporary because Adidas says they're still going to be selling it just without Yeezy. Gap, JP Morgan Chase, MRC. That's the studio who completed a documentary about Kanye, but they have shelved it after his recent comments. And he was also kicked out of Skechers. Now, the big thing that I know everyone's talking about is what he said to the Jewish community. And he put out a tweet, and I'm reading this verbatim, so this way y'all don't crucify me. I'm just reading what he wrote. He said, "When I wake up, I'm going to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. Funny thing is, I can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jew. Also, you guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever oppresses your agenda." Then he doubled down on these statements later on the Drink Champs interview with Noriega, saying, "I can literally say anti-Semitic shit and they can't drop me. Now what?" Well, Adidas dropped him.
That's what.
Days before that, he made headlines for wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt during his fashion show in Paris. He called Black Lives Matter a scam, at least the movement. And then going back to the Drink Champs interview, he made comments saying, based on a documentary that Candace Owens had shown him, that George Floyd did not die as a result to asphyxiation by Derek Chauvin putting his knee on his neck, but that it was the fentanyl. So that was a lot, and something new always pops up, so it's Kanye. But with that said, so you guys are all caught up. That was a lot of shit. Mike, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. And the reason why is because in my entire life of existing on this planet, no pressure, but you are literally the biggest Kanye West fan I know.
No lies told.
I know this. I know you put this guy on, I don't want to say a pedestal, but you definitely have a lot of respect for him. I know he's. Oh, okay, all right.
You can call it for what it is. It's okay.
All right, I know you have a lot of respect for him. You admire his talent, his music, and in light of everything going on, I only know Kanye through his music and through some of his antics. I don't really know him as a person. Not saying you do either, like you hang out with him on the low, but I feel like you
That'd be great.
have I feel like you have been so enamored by this individual that there are a lot of things you know about him. And, I hear some comments people say, oh, ever since his mom died, this, that, and the third, the bipolar, and it all comes from somewhere, but I think some of it is misinformed. But anyways, enough rambling. Mike, what do you make of all this? Like, what do you think of what's going on in light of Kanye?
The first thing I want to say regarding Kanye, yes, I am his number one fan. I have been for a very long time. Put that out there so this way people can understand that.
Since the college dropout, like literally since his first album.
I've been a fan of Kanye before I knew Kanye was producing some of the tracks that I already loved, let alone for himself, as he was making his debut album, The College Dropout. Yes, I will try my best to provide as much objectivity as it pertains to Kanye West as I can possibly muster. But before I go any further, considering the stance that he's taken and doubled down on and tripled down on as of late, I'd like to quote the great comedian Dave Chappelle with this quick disclaimer. I denounce anti-Semitism in all its forms, and I stand with my friends in the Jewish community. And as he said, Kanye, you would have done yourself a great service had you started off your tweets like that. Now that that's out of the way, as you said, it was a lot. It was a lot to unpack in a very quick amount of time. And considering how quick a turnaround we have as a society with this, all the news that comes out, whether it's large scale things like shootings or even small quotes that you get from politicians, he figured out a way, as he always does, to dominate headlines, and in recent memory, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons. First and foremost, the Dave Chappelle quote aside, joking aside, there's no defending Kanye West in this regard. There really, isn't. Devoid of how deep into whatever conspiracies you lean into or whatever may have you, I think logic has to take over at a certain point, and you understand that, even if you have those beliefs, maybe this isn't the platform to put them out on, to say the least. I don't think anybody should really have those beliefs. I think when you take certain jokes, certain stereotypes, no matter how benign or innocent you might think they are, and you make them the basis of your argument and what you believe to be your rational argument, that's where you mess up, and that's where Kanye messed up. And yeah, we can get into the whys of it all. I think if we start back at when his mother passed away, I know, for me, you pointed it out, and it is a fact. I followed him heavily, his whole career, and even to this day. I'm going to be 34 years old soon, and I've got no shame saying that out loud. Everybody's got idols and, people that they hold in high regard or, put on pedestals. Kanye is that person for me. I mean, for anybody to sit back and no matter how much you despise what he's saying, how can you not sit back and see the genesis of his de-evolution, as it were, as his mom having passed away? It doesn't, two brain cells, you don't need any more than that to see, oh my God, this massive change behaviorally. And I say behaviorally, I think that's a very important distinction to make, behaviorally, in this man, because he's just as cocky or confident or arrogant, however you want to put it, today as he was then. This is the same guy we just watched in the Genius documentary, which was fantastic. All over A&R's offices trying to push his album because he had that much confidence that as long as somebody listened to it, if the right person got a hold of it, I could get a record deal, I can get this record out, I can be a rapper the same way, Jay-Z is right now, that Nas is right now, that 50 is right now. Like, I can be this same person, you know what I mean? So that's not what I mean when I say behaviorally. I mean his overall demeanor, the manner with which he would address certain topics, I know there's a lot of memes about how deadpan and how serious his face is at all times. He never smiled or things like that. But I mean, there's also a million and one interviews that I could pull up right now that show how much levity he can bring to a conversation, how funny he can be, how insightful he could be, how well versed in a lot of different topics he could be. Obviously, coming from his background, who his father was, a photographer by trade, but a very worldly person. His mother, obviously, her background in education goes without saying. She was a professor at Chicago, University. I mean, so it's like, he didn't grow up, in a less than situation, as far as intellect was concerned, as far as communication was concerned. So with all that said, yeah, I think we're watching in real time a psychotic break in a human being, and like devoid of celebrity status. I know this is very not fun to say nowadays because we're not, worshiping celebrities and things like that. But it's like, yeah, dog, like this man is diagnosed bipolar, diagnosed with behavioral conditions that he was medicated for. Not that it's self-diagnosed and yeah, I'm crazy or I got a little OCD like you say sometimes when you want things in a particular way. Like my man was diagnosed by professionals. He was begged by his wife, his former wife Kim Kardashian, to maintain his medication regimen, to seek professional. So it's not as though this isn't common knowledge. So for us to kind of, not take that into account, and I say us, I just mean people who are, turned off by his antics now at this point, don't really want to give him the time of day, don't use your mental health or declining mental health as an excuse, which it's a fair sentiment. It's a fair sentiment for people on the outside looking in who maybe don't have to deal with it. If I want to give a little bit more in-depth analysis as to, my understanding of it, is that I myself have suffered, diagnosed, have sought, mental health help, to this day. So I do have a little bit of insight, insight into, what that arena is like. So to have those same afflictions and to have a camera in your face at all times, in your home, on the sidewalk, grocery shopping, wherever may have you, and obviously with, the manner with which he invites it, just as who he is by nature, I just don't think it can be lost on us that, from a mental health standpoint, we're watching a breakdown, a complete and utter breakdown. I mean, Jesus Christ, look at his interviews as of late. This guy is sitting there in this chair, and you can very clearly see he's not all the way there. This is not the same person that was giving interviews on, Ellen and Oprah and, the fashion weeks that he was doing back in 2007 and 2008 and even before that. It's not the same person, not close. Now we all grow, we all change, obviously. He's been in the limelight for we're going on 15 16 years or so. Nobody stays the same forever, not especially when you've had the traumas that he's had. But in the same breath, objectively, you have to want to get better. You know what I mean? I think that's the defining thing here for Kanye, is that I think he's shown that he doesn't want to get what normal society deems better. He does not want to be medicated. He does not want to be therapized. He does not want any of that. And he has slowly but surely ostracized himself from anyone that considered themselves a close friend to him or even family to him, in lieu of I don't know. I don't know whose approval he's after, if anybody's at all. I think he's shown time and again he couldn't care less what anybody else thinks. But I feel like there is, I don't know, there is a means to his end, to say the least. And
I want to dig into that, actually.
Go ahead.
Because I've heard, like, on radio stations, Charlemagne the God has said this, where Kanye is seeking the approval of white Americans.
I did see that interview. Yep.
Yeah, which is why he was brown-nosing with Trump and wearing the MAGA hat. But what I really want to get into, I mean, and you've already shared a lot of information that was insightful, is the crux of this. Where do you think that came from, the recent statements and comments Kanye made? What I want to ask is, do you think this has something to do with him not taking a medication, or his lack of trust in people, or him trying to regain his independence and freedom with the comments that he made. Because, like you had just said, he's had the media all around him, cameras in his face, even though he's diagnosed with these mental illnesses. He lost his mother. So, and since then, he's just been dealing with it by constantly working, being on limelight, people putting mics in his face, literally ask him, how do you think your mom would feel? Which I personally think is a little bit disrespectful. Like, we all have our ways of coping with loss, and to remind somebody of it doesn't really make it much better, So with that, and then his marriage with Kim Kardashian, do you think a part of this is him trying to break free? Because, a lot of people will say he's crazy, So I'm just curious to hear what you think about that, the stuff that he said about the Jewish community, because I feel like that was a big thing a lot of people were talking about too, when the crux as to why he lost a lot of his deals and partners.
I think from just a purely mental health standpoint, I think his particular affliction, it does invite a lot of, kind of down the rabbit hole kind of thinking. So, for people who have certain, beliefs or develop certain beliefs in certain conspiracies that they kind of maybe give credence to internally, if you stick yourself into an echo chamber the way Kanye West has done, I say successfully, but I mean that very facetiously. It's not a good thing that he has done that. But when you do that and you then surround yourself with people who have those like-minded thoughts, those trains of thoughts, those beliefs, all it does is reinforce where you're at. And when you're not really in control, truly in control, the way he believes he's in control, it's a recipe for disaster. It really is. So I think it's heavily his antics as of the last week. I think it's heavily involved with equal parts his mental health, but also he's not a dumb person. So many people have pointed out that he had not cared for some of the contracts he had signed with Gap, with Adidas, things like that. Try to figure out ways to get around it. But when you are manic, the way he is, when you're manic depressive, your mind is moving at 1,000,000 miles a second. So you are not a patient person in any situation, let alone one that you are wildly uncomfortable in. And he very much made it clear that he was wildly uncomfortable in certain situations, and he figured out a way to remove himself from those situations, albeit at the cost of any semblance of respect that anybody had for him, or support that people were willing to provide him, even with all of anything else that he had done even before this. But yeah, when you start attaching yourself to the Candace Owens of the world and the Donald Trumps of the world, and you try to rationalize that by saying, well, these people made it, their voices are being heard, and I want my voice heard too. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of people's voices who are being heard that aren't shitty people, that don't have terrible beliefs, that don't conduct themselves in a manner that nobody should be proud of, let alone want to associate themselves with. And for whatever reason, and I just think it's more bucking traditional thinking, which has been a huge proponent of since the college drop. Again, using genius as a launching pad for who he became. He's been that way for as long as you can remember. Come on, man. This is a guy that built himself on being a backpack rapper in a sea of gangster rap. His entire career was based on being different, being the other, thinking outside the box. It's just that because of his mental health decline, that thinking outside the box, you're not even looking at a box anymore. You're looking at something completely different than the rest of the world is.
He's seeing things differently than how we see it.
Yeah. And in not all the best ways. JP, what do you think?
Yeah, JP, what do you think? I want to ask your thoughts on this.
Okay, so I'm going to try to go back and think of what you were saying. I'll just do it like one topic at a time. When it came to when it comes to the things that Kanye West says, I think a lot of things he says are, those spontaneous utterances are kind of crazy. The thing he said about Taylor Swift and Beyonce, whether he was right or wrong about that, he shouldn't have said that. There's a time and place to, say what you believe is correct. The thing about what he said later on about George Bush, not liking black people, is it possible? Very possible, but at the same time, again, time and place. When it comes to the Derek Chauvin and him placing his knee on the gentleman's neck, uh, I think he was completely out of place for saying that. It was ultimately disrespectful for Kanye West to say that because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like I just said, well, on the last podcast, I recently retired from law enforcement after 24 years. Um, so I know what certain types of chokeholds and direct pressure will do to the human body. And 8 minutes and 46 seconds is more than enough time for someone to expire under the weight of someone's knee, whether he's calling out or not. When it comes to Candace Owens, again, I think a lot of that is publicity. Um, White Lives Matter is going to be a triggering response to Black Lives Matter. When it comes to Black Lives Matter, you have to understand that what the Black community is trying to say is, I matter right now. What the topic that we're talking about is me, and I want to talk about me. And what happens is that other people don't understand it. I'll give you a kind of analogy. If you're a person with a child who is sickly, and your child is going to die of, like, say, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the doctor tells you, hey, you have 3 months for your child to live, and you try to raise money for your kid, and you're trying, because you don't have enough money to pay for doctors or whatever like that, but you just want to at least bury the child correctly. It's going to be disingenuous for someone else to say, oh, well,
Right.
my kid's sick too. My kid has the sniffles. You know, your kid's going to die in 3 months. Your kid's going to get over this cold in about 30 minutes, maybe 3 days at the most. It's disingenuous to say that. When it comes to Adidas, yeah, literally the person who started Adidas was brothers with the person who started Puma, and the guy who started Adidas is a card-carrying Nazi. That's not a lie. Kanye was on time with that. Um, when it comes to supporting of Trump, I think again that's about Kanye trying to uh, put it like this: 60% of the United States is super conservative. So what happens is maybe the majority of that 60% of people who are conservative don't listen to Kanye West music. But would you listen to Kanye West music if you too became a sponsor for Trump? More than likely, yes. Think about it. All you have to do is just see him. You see him, and if Trump gives him a pat on the back, you might have other people who are going to give him a pat on the back. Um, as for what Mike was saying about like psychotropic drugs and how Kanye is taking, how Kanye has mental illness and to a certain degree. I believe he has some sort of mental illness. My mom's a therapist. I hear all about mental illness for like the last 50 some odd years. I mean, she just retired herself. So I hear all about that stuff, and how she did it. I, but I have heard recently that there is a guy named Harley Pasternak, and supposedly he's Kanye's trainer. He's the one who tells him, yes, you can say this, no, you can't say this, and supposedly this individual has access and has said via texts that Kanye has recently put on social media that this guy tells him what he can and cannot say. And what happens is he has threatened Kanye allegedly. Not that I'm 100% sure saying this, but he allegedly has put it out there that he has the ability to no longer allow him to be able to see his children and stuff like that. That they will highly medicate him and take him out the picture like that. Lastly, when it comes to the people of Israel, um, I don't think, and this is me personally, um, I know what I know what Mike said to quote Dave Chappelle. That's in play. But if you look in the Bible, if you look in the Talmud, and if you look in the Torah, it clearly says who the people of you know, who the people are who are considered the actual people of God. And what happens is in the Bible, Deuteronomy 28, it clearly states that Noah has three sons. There's Ham, there's Shem, and there's Japheth. And what happens is when it comes to the house of Shem, the people who are direct descendants, the people who are supposed to be God's chosen people, kind of look like me. While the people who are considered they're considered non-Jews, but they're considered what is it called? They're considered Gentiles, are from the house of Japhet. And then there's also Ham, and Ham is a different. It has a different set of children. But what happens is, uh, biblically speaking, biblically speaking, he did not say anything wrong. He really didn't, because if you quote biblical texts, again, in the Bible, in the Talmud, and in the Torah, they tell you clearly, in the Talmud specifically says Jews have black faces. Literally says that. Um, the Torah is basically the Old Testament with some books of Moses wrapped up into there, and it lets you know. Uh, and then if you go to the New Testament, it also lets you know who these people of color are. And that's what it is. You know, there's the Exodus from Egypt. A majority of people who would be considered Jews from that time would have went to West Africa. Those West African people would have been the people who would have been sold into the slavery. And, you know, it is more than possible that you have African American people who are descendants from the house of Shem or from the 12 tribes. And I don't think he said anything that was wrong. What happens is how he's being treated, however, is a direct effect of uh, how people are treated when you no longer want to be told what's right. You have to understand that let's say for 100%, let's just say for just argument's sake, how do you give reciprocity to people who have been
Mm-hmm.
enslaved since 1619 on this particular continent? How do you do that? How do you give back? I mean, allegedly we're supposed to get some 40 acres and a mule, but they said if we were to give every African American who is non-Caribbean, who is non Native American, who is non you know from some other part of the world, it would cost approximately the amount
Roughly.
that the American debt is. And what are we, like $17 trillion in debt? You would have to give out X amount of money that would equal that. Um, you know, I mean, even if you want to round off an even number and say there's 40 million African Americans, which is supposedly 13% of the United States, which is a weird number that for the last 403 years that we've been on this continent that we've only equaled 13%, even though we were here long before. I mean, 1619 to 1865 is slavery. 1865 to 1964 is Jim Crow. And then for the last 57 years, we've still had the fuckery. I mean, listen, I worked in law enforcement, so I have seen the fuckery for myself. I know what happens out there. One of the reasons I went into law enforcement was to protect myself, friends, and family. So I know what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do. I'm just, it just seems weird. It just seems weird. And people are going to get smacked on the hand if you say anything against the people who are uh, going against uh, what Kanye West said. Ironically, ironically, and this will be the last thing I'm going to say, and until we go into it further. Again, I brought up Adidas a little earlier. Adidas actually were Nazis or supported the Nazi movement. So, who is more wrong? Kanye for suggesting that he is or we are chosen people, which is a statement, or you know, and even with Kyrie putting a video out that's sold on a Jewish platform like Amazon. Amazon is actually profiting from the movie, books. there's two different parts of Hebrews to Negroes. I mean,
Well, it's funny you bring that up because that's something I actually want to touch on too and expand upon because that is something I do find interesting, and I share that sentiment that you have because, and I feel like everybody is like this right now because God forbid you say, "Oh, you hate Jewish people," but it's like no, it's like I'm just calling it for how it looks, and I think what they're doing is having an opposite effect because
I would also like to say one other thing. If you go to Ethiopia, which is on the east side of Africa, there's a race of people called Falashas. Falashas or Falashians are black Jews, right? In Ethiopia right now, the oldest Bible, I mean, sorry, the oldest one of the oldest Bibles is there. It's about yay big, yay thick. And what happens is there also is the first Christian churches in Ethiopia. They are referred to by the people in Israel as Beta Jews. I don't know why, because technically they're right there. Ethiopia is so much closer than where the Khazars lived or the Caucasus Mountains are. It's just so much closer. I mean, who's closer to, it's like saying New Jersey, which is real close to where I am, versus coming from Europe, which it's one is much closer. I could literally drive, take 15 minutes, or jump into the freaking to the Hudson, swim across, and be there closer than someone who's coming from a different land. So I mean, it's just important that we understand that persons like Kanye West aren't necessarily wrong, and by using his mental illness to say that's why he's wrong is wrong on two ways. If you're going to say he's mentally ill and what he's saying is not correct, that's one thing. But what happens is then he shouldn't be necessarily punished for mental illness, right? Because if you can't help what you know what I'm saying. So are you punishing him for him being mentally ill, or are you punishing him for what he said? And what happens is you're punishing him for what he said. But what happens is what he said can be proven
well, that's
biblically.
the thing that I find weird, right? Because obviously he's a celebrity, and the way how the world works, people hold celebrities to a higher status. But what I was trying to say earlier is that I am in agreement where I don't think he necessarily said anything wrong. He was stating a fact. Like, if someone were to say, oh, the NBA is primarily made up of black African American males, you wouldn't be like, oh, that's racist. Like, that's a fact. Like, that's just what it is. Like, there's a lot of African American males that dominate that sport. That's just a fact. That doesn't make it racist. That just is what it is. And then the other thing was that what happened with Kyrie Irving, it's like the equivalent of me suggesting a show from Netflix on my Twitter, like, oh y'all should check out Midnight Mass because it talks about something. And well, the point I want to get at is that why condemn these people who just suggested instead of the people who actually have this documentary on their platform? They're selling it. They're making the money out of it. Like even Adidas is like, we're gonna drop Kanye, but we're still going to sell his designs. Well, it's like if you don't stand with him and what he speaks or anything, then why continue to produce things that he created with his vision? Like why? Because it's all about the money.
If you felt as strongly as you claim to,
Yeah,
right?
it's all about the money.
Correct. Absolutely.
Let me explain to you. At the end of the day, it's all about the money, and at the end of the day, um, African American people have always been the trendsetters and will always be the trendsetters. So that's why you can take away someone's platform, but then still sell them. I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of people have recently complained that someone like Michael Jordan doesn't sign, he doesn't sign autographs. Like a kid walked up to him, the kid asked him, "Hey, Mike, you're my favorite basketball player. Can you sign this?" And he was like, "No, I can't. I can't sign it." And he was like, kid, like, he kind of shooed the kid away. Supposedly, the kid's father offered Michael Jordan a reasonable sum of money. This is what I was hearing. No, it's hearsay. But Mike was like, no, because what happens is he doesn't own his own name anymore. Do you understand what that means? That you don't, you're so famous, that something that belongs to you physically no longer belongs to you. Recently, there are things where people are asking you where um, they want to borrow your face for AI robots or whatever like that. And what happens is part of the contract basically says that your face and likeness for perpetuity, for even after you die, is still going to be able to be monetized. They're like when you go to like everybody here is into rap. You see the Tupac has a hologram. Here it is, somebody's making money off of this man's visage, over his face, over his body, over his tattoos. Someone is actually making money off of a dead man. So I think I think when it comes to I think when it comes to how this is like, why would you punish Kyrie? It's because black men in America with platforms have all been silenced in one way or another. King, Malcolm X, you know, there's just so many people in our uh, in our little realm where if you speak, if you have a platform, you have to be silenced, and you're going to be silenced. Put like this: you think when it came to the whole, Derek Chauvin situation, do you think he was the only person who has excommunicated someone from life while allegedly doing their job? No. Every other week or whatever like that, you see somebody's son or daughter is shot and killed, and then all of a sudden you hear, oh, this kid, he never did anything wrong. He goes to Sunday school. He does this. He does that, or whatever like that. It's just kind of weird. It's not weird. I mean, I know.
Yeah, I think it definitely is weird because it's having an opposite effect of what they want. Because by said canceling these individuals or condemning them or basically cutting all ties with them, everyone who's witnessing this, right, is now kind of questioning it. Like, even me. It's like, now I want to see that documentary that Kyrie Irving was suggesting. Like, before, I didn't care. But they made it a big deal now. And everything that happened with Kanye, that was making me question this. It's like, that's interesting. Like he said, one thing, well, a few things, I'm not going to, not to downplay it, about the Jewish community, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it was anything that was crazy, wild, racist. He basically was like, they run the music industry. Like, they run all these agencies and this, that, and the third.
I'm just let me give you some definitions. Let me give you some definitions. The word racist is a word that is pushed back and forth like it's a tennis game, and it's really not. For someone to be racist, they have to have power over you. So let's give you a definition of what power would be. If I can tell you where your kids can go to school, that's power. If I can tell you what neighborhood you can live in, that's power. If I can tell you that you can't vote across the street, even though everybody else is voting across the street, that's power. If I can tell you things like, you know, you can only make a certain amount of money, or you can only play a certain sport, or whatever like that. And if you play these sports or whatever like that, you're not allowed to say anything out of context because I will punish you, like that. That is power. Black people don't have power like that. We don't have power. So put it like this: prejudice plus power equals racism. Again, prejudice plus power equals racism. If I say, hey, listen, Chris, I like you, but I don't like your brother Mike, right? I'm being prejudiced, right? But if I control Mike's ability to go and come as he chooses, where he wants to live, where he wants to eat, where he wants to drink, if I force him to go through the back door to come into the restaurant and leave out the back door to go to a restaurant, or I don't serve him, or I serve him bummy food because I don't like him, guess what? That is me being racist if I control his destiny. I do not control his destiny. So at best, I can be prejudiced. And there's a difference. Black people are prejudiced. Everybody is prejudiced. Everybody has their preconceived notions of certain things. But that's not racism. Again, racism is power plus prejudice.
Absolutely correct. It's a distinction that I've asked people to make so many times in the past. People get really butthurt when they hear, African American people say that, and then they get even more upset when they hear non African American people affirm that, and I am among them. I'll be the first one to say no. A African American, black, you can't be racist. Can't be racist because if you look at the definition of racism, as you said, it requires prejudice, hatred, but ultimately power. The ability to oppress someone based on your prejudices is
Right.
racism. And that's the part that people get lost in. And so, no, by definition, a black person, African American person cannot be racist. Prejudices lean into stereotypes, but racism, no, because unfortunately, power is never going to be afforded in mass to African American people in this country ever, ever, just never. Um, but if I can just speak to something that you brought up, JP, and even you, Chris, no, inherently, did Kanye West say anything wildly racist? No. Did he verbalize observations he's made in his, I say 16 or 15 years, and that's me talking mainstream, but his now 20 plus years in entertainment, in these offices, with these A&Rs, with these reps, with these executives across music, across fashion, across so many different forms of media. He puts out there an observation he's made about who he thinks or who he believes is in power in these media circles, and that's taken as anti-Semitic. I'm gonna quote Dave Chappelle, his SNL monologue, because I thought it was very poignant. But more importantly, he said something that really stuck out, and of course he poses it in a manner with where it comes off as a joke, kind of tongue in cheek. But he says, and I quote, he says it's a big deal. He, Kanye West, had broken the show business rules. The rules of perception. If they're black, it's a gang. If they're Italian, it's a mob. But if they're Jewish, it's a coincidence, and you should never speak about it. People from the Anti Defamation League have been coming out left, right, and center. Dave Chappelle's anti-Semitic now, and in addition to being transphobic and blah 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 blah, and that's all cute and all, but you exactly what the Dave Chappelles of the world are trying to point out. The Jon Stewarts, the list goes on. You went right past everything, and then you heard Jewish, and then all of a sudden, it's anti-Semitic. How the hell are you supposed to have a conversation about anything? Is at the first moment you want to say something's anti-Semitic, and it comes back to where power is derived from. You just pointed out how massive a company of Amazon is that has this very negative documentary, from Hebrews to Negroes, and it's like, but you guys still have it on there. You want to come out and you put out your stupid little presser about how we vehemently are against anything that Kyrie has to say or shared or Kanye West says, and yet I can go on there right now and watch the shit out of it after I pay, of course, and watch it. You get after I pay you, after you get yours, I can still consume the offensive materials, provided you get paid, and therein lies the problem.
Which simply proves that it has nothing to do with the content that's there. Because what if Kyrie decided to say nothing about that movie? What if Kyrie decided to say something about uh, The Diary of Anne Frank or Schindler's List, and he was saying that he watched these two movies and he enjoyed those movies? He would get a standing ovation. And the reason he would get a standing ovation is because these movies are already vetted as good movies to watch about those particular people, right? Understand it has nothing to do. It really has nothing to do with the movie itself, because there's terrible movies about the atrocities that have happened to the Jewish people. There's all kinds of stuff about it, but it only seems that it becomes bad if someone of color mentions it in relation to uh, a dynamic power struggle. When that happens, then all of a sudden we're like, oh man, we got it. They got to go. They got to go. And what happens is you have to understand that uh, New Israel is basically the way it is since only 1949, since basically after World War II. Put it like this: Black people have been asking for help, have been asking for money, have been asking for reparations since 1865. Since 1865, we've got no reparations, but we have people who get reparations. We've had Japanese Americans who've gotten reparations because they were in concentration camps here in America, both in Canada and in the United States. We have, for some reason, since the late 1985, 85, 86, we've been giving uh, old Palestine, which is New Israel now, we've been giving them like $3 billion a year. $3 billion a year. You know what $3 billion a year would do for the black community? The $3 billion a year in the black community would build schools, hospitals, churches, things that we need to make us better people. But if you go to New Israel, because there's a thing that basically says that if your mom is Jewish, you can go back, and then you can go back to your own home, and you benefit. You can join the military. I think they have a minimum of a 2 year military service. You also have free healthcare, free education. Can you imagine another country that we give money to has these free services that we can't get for free? But how is bringing that up anti-Semitic? Because the money's coming from us. So what happens is the money's coming from people of color, it's coming from white people, it's coming from Spanish people, it's coming from Asian people, it's coming from all these people that are in America, and our monies are going someplace else instead of coming here to help us be better people. I mean, it's just really, really crazy. When it comes to anti-Semitism, remember part of the word Semite or Semitism is you're talking about Asians and you're talking about Afro people. Afro people, those people. So you're talking about Southeast Asian people, you're talking about other Asian people, and you're talking about Middle Eastern people, and you're talking about Black people. So what happens is it's almost like me being like I'm Haitian and Trinidadian, but it's almost like saying I'm anti-Caribbean because I don't like a song by you know some Caribbean singer. And I'm like, oh, I don't like his song. And so all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're anti-Caribbean. No, bro. I mean, I, I can't have a question, or I can't ask, or I can't like or dislike something that seems weird to me. I can't question it. It's just weird, man. It's just,
No, sorry. Yeah, I think a lot of that comes with this um, PC culture, people trying to be politically correct or, cancel people or everyone's sensitive to everything nowadays. But based on what I was hearing, what you guys are saying, um, and I believe this to be the case a little bit. It's almost like they took Kanye and they made an example of him.
Oh, of course,
I mean,
100%.
what happened? Yeah, what happened to him like a month ago is the same exact things. Not same exact, but very similar to when he did the whole thing with Taylor Swift, and then everyone tried to like cancel him. He went away, and what happened? He came back and like dropped like a classic, an amazing album.
Can I tell you something? If you are, for lack of a better word, a black buffoon, where you say dumb shit and you go online and you're just crazy and everybody's expecting you to say the next wild thing, nothing happens to you. Nobody actually canceled him for the Taylor Swift. Nobody canceled him for the George Bush don't like black people. No, people just looked at it and it was a talking point and it disappeared. Nobody said anything when he was with Trump. And the reason why people wouldn't say anything when he was with Trump is, you have to think, if he's a billionaire and you had to pick between Democrats and Republicans, which force are you going to go with? Because what happens is if you're a Republican, Republicans know how to keep their money. So if you're a rich Republican, yeah, you're going to go for Trump. But if you're not so rich, you might go to the Democratic Party. But guess what? Kanye was super rich. So what happens is what he did hanging out with Trump just makes excellent sense. I mean, I would have, if I have $1 billion in the bank, you don't think I'm going to go towards someone who's going to make sure that money stays there and I can make even more money from it? Of course, I'm going to go there. But what happens is if I'm not a billionaire and I'm less than the top 1% and I'm a minority and I just want to be able to get some minority feedback, like, maybe get my kid in a good school, maybe, have some groceries that I can afford, or, a place that I can live that's decent. Yeah, I might go with the Democrat.
At the end of the day, everyone's gonna do what they got to do to protect themselves and their assets and stuff. But going back to what I was trying to say before is that it just comes off like they were just trying to make an example of Kanye, and that like anyone else that speaks out about or says anything hinting at the Jewish community, they could be gone like that. I mean, the fact that his bank dropped him, it was almost like it doesn't matter how many millions you make, you're still black. So like your money isn't even green to us. So we don't want that. Adidas, I already stated what I said about that. He lost, $1.5 billion in a day. And it's kind of like you guys were saying, is that by them trying to denounce Kanye and I think blow it up a little bit more than it needed to be, was them also trying to show like I think inadvertently it showed us like who's really in control and who's in power, and it kind of brought some legitimacy to what Kanye was actually saying. Like these people run this, run that, run this, and then it's almost like he's like, "Watch, I'm gonna say crazy stuff, and then watch what happens to me." And then we saw everything that happened to him, and everyone was just like, "Yeah, he's a piece of shit. He's crazy. He's this, that, and the third." And now he's kind of like gone away. And I find it very interesting that this is what they do. And I'm not talking about the Jewish community, but I'm talking about these people in the shadows that do these things.
Let's leave that topic alone. Let's just talk about like politics. So here it is. I mean, your last name is a Hispanic last name. So check this out. What happens is let's look at Puerto Rico. I'm just gonna talk about Puerto Rico for a second. Here it is. They're a commonwealth. They're a strategic base point between Cuba and the United States. You know what that's about. The other thing is you have a race of brown skinned people who don't have the ability to vote for the president of the United States. You also have Guam, which is also a commonwealth with darker brown people who can't vote for the president. The reason I bring that up is to show you what power looks like. Yeah, you have the title of American on your sleeve, but you can't benefit from it. You can't benefit from it. So what happens is, um, I've just substituted those people who feel a certain type of way versus how politics works in a certain way and how politics work towards people of color. You've ever heard of redlining? Redlining is when, like I mentioned before, you live in a certain place, but here it is, everybody's voting across the street, but they're looking at your ID and they're like, "Nah, bro, you got to go another 20 miles that way in that direction so you could vote." But you're like, "But I'm right across the street." I mean, there's institutionalized prejudice and racism throughout the United States. I know we've talked about before. Me and you, Chris, have talked before. Pipeline between schools and jail, and how it affects the men that go through these institutions. You know, so it doesn't surprise me with the Kyrie Irving situation. It doesn't surprise me with the Kanye West situation. Um, I do think Kanye needs to have someone to counsel him. I think he needs to learn more historical, documents. And I think if he's going to talk about a culture that is so big, he should have come with receipts. And when I say come with receipts, he needs to come with biblical passages. He needs to come with Torah passages. He needs to come with Talmud passages, and he needs to come with other people who are like they're like Jews for Jesus. He needs to come with some other people like that who would have supported him. So this way he wouldn't have been isolated and kicked out and then have his money taken and stuff like that. Because that's what happens when you say something that goes against the grain. You're gonna be. This is not. He's not the first black person this has happened to. When it comes to Kyrie, I think Kyrie just got the backslash. They were like, it's almost like you're watching a fight on the street, and you're like, oh, he's standing close by, and the dude's like, I got groceries in my hand, bro. I'm just trying to get into my building. You guys are fighting in front of my building, and then he
But the
gets
thing,
arrested.
but the thing with Kyrie is that he's got a history of saying some other like wildly outlandish shit, and I think his history did not lend itself to the benefit of the doubt. So I think that played a part in it too. That he said some yeah, he's a flat earther. Yeah, anti. Obviously we all saw his very staunch beliefs on the vaccinations and whatnot. Whatever which way you lean, is irrelevant to me. But just we're talking the perception of society, at large was like, sir, where's your logic right now? More so with the flat Earth thing than the anti-vax, because the country is played divided, right down the middle of who was for it, who was not for it, and blah 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 blah. But I think because of that, because the belief was Kyrie has some wild beliefs, that's what made people immediately jump on his case about the link to the video.
The thing about it is if you believe someone is saying nonsensical garbage. So let's say if you come to me and you tell me, oh, the sky is red, but everybody else is saying the sky is blue. Um, isn't the best thing to do to just ignore me? Or is the best thing to do to emphasize my alleged ridiculousness and then try to make me look worse than what it is? I mean, or is it that again, what I said before? If you're a person of color and you have a platform, with several thousands or hundreds of thousands or maybe a million people, why is it when you say something why is it that you must be canceled? Why can't you just speak your piece and just have people just be like, I either agree or disagree?
Yeah, no one should be vilified for posing the question or posing a thought. Accountability is you just should be accountability. I don't think canceling somebody outright is ever going to really be the answer. And I say that knowing full damn well that anybody can go through my Facebook feed and I'll be the first one to be like, somebody that I don't like, I'll be like, oh, get them the hell out of here. No, we can't rock with this no more, blah, 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 blah. But anybody who knows, it's like, I say a lot of things in jest. I say a lot of things just to be inflammatory, just because you just kind of stand back and watch the world burn at that point. But when a celebrity does it, when someone who is considered the other does it, they don't get the benefit of the doubt. They don't get the comeback story, the Robert Downey Jr. story, where you can literally do time in a federal fucking prison, come back and get back into the good graces. That's not to say that Robert Downey Jr. didn't deserve it, and this is kind of unrelated to everything we're talking about, but you get the overall point that I'm trying to make is that, and what Kanye was trying to prove to everybody, which is, by saying, watch, they can't cancel me, watch, they can't do this, watch, they can't do that. He knew damn well that there's no truth to that, but that was his motive. He did that. But I believe he purposefully did that to mastermind a way out of a situation that he did not want to be in, albeit at a great personal financial cost, obviously. And I would even say personal cost, because obviously now people are very much distancing themselves from him. But if people don't look at that and say
like Shaq trying to distance him.
Yeah. Shaq had he had a lot to say. No, I mean, even Shaq, what he said was, relatively benign. At the end of the day, it was more just like, kind of like big brother to little brother talk. That's the way I perceived his message overall. But
if I was worth, just give me a number, like $10 million, and I'm being paid, and
right.
my lifestyle is being facilitated by the powers that be. You're never going to see me. You're never going to. You. What do you think about it? I have absolutely no opinion. Oh, come on, you're standing right there, sir. I'll be like, absolutely no opinion on that. I'm
Yeah, you
gonna
don't want to fumble the
because
bag.
because I don't want to fumble the bag, bro. I don't want to
Yeah,
fumble the bag.
yeah.
I'm trying. I'm trying to hold the bag.
That's reasonable. That's just reasonable.
That's
Yeah,
reasonable.
yeah.
So what happens is it's very I can understand why so many people are up in arms with what Ye and Kyrie says, or even though Kyrie didn't really say anything, but I understand. But what happens is it takes a certain amount of courage to be your own man. It takes a lot of courage. The majority of people that are out here are followers. We're that's the trend. Okay, we got it. Oh, I got a new iPhone, or I'm gonna go to get another iPhone. It looks exactly the same as my old iPhone. Works exactly the same way. I gotta go get it, bro. I gotta go get it. They changed the plug this time. I gotta get it, bro. I gotta get it. So I understand. I understand. And I think Kanye again should have preempted what he was going to say. I mean, don't go full tilt. If you're going to say what you're going to say, say within context, and at the same time, uh, be ready for the blowback. And when somebody's going to tell you that the blowback's coming, you just can't be all willy nilly and go into different places about it. You got to be focused. If you're going to stay and say what you're going to say, stay there. If you're going to stay, if you're going to stay within like the biblical ramifications of what the Bible says and what God says, then stay there. Don't go anyplace else. Focus there, because what happens is they're going to keep chipping at you, and they're going to get you. They're going to get you, and it happens, and it's terrible.
See, that's the thing though with Kanye, as far as it pertains to like you mentioned before, coming with receipts, especially as it pertains to utilizing biblical texts as kind of those receipts, so to speak. You know, Kanye and religion to me, it's a very
He doesn't come across as someone who
he's not
is
genuinely
devout.
yeah, he's not genuinely devout. I can't and now here's the thing though. I'm not going to say what he is. I can't say what he is, but it doesn't seem as though that you are, you don't really live that lifestyle. Now, mind you, and my brother can attest to this, I am not religious at all. I would, probably be considered at the very least agnostic, if not atheist. So, for me, religion, it's not something that I didn't wind up learning about in different sects of religion, different forms of Christianity and Catholicism and Judaism, Hinduism. I've done my best to learn as much as I can so I can have the conversation and be informed while having the conversation, not just simply coming from opinions or stereotypes. So I said all of that to say, if we're just going off the good old book, my hero Kanye West hasn't been exactly living the most Jesusly life, even after his, alleged born again Christianity by any stretch of the imagination. Whether that's his direct words, his tweets, other actions, you can't really call yourself, man of Jesus, and then, kind of hide behind but I'm also human still. But I'm also, it's like you can't pick and choose which way the wind is blowing, how devout you are on any given day. It's kind of an affront to people who are devout, to people who do find solace and joy and peace from that. So, to that end, it's like I don't think Kanye would ever even be capable of doing that, just because I don't know if there's any real sincerity to the religious aspects of it all. I just think he had a thought, ran with that thought, and decided to post said thought. I don't think it was very planned out or done. I think it was just like a lot of things Kanye West does because he wanted to.
Right. Right.
I don't know if it
Agreed.
was because there was a larger purpose at play. With Kyrie, I'll give Kyrie credit that as much as I dislike him as a basketball player, you know, I would very much argue in his defense that if he posted that link up, I wouldn't say it's because he had some deep belief that everything in it was true. I would say that he's done a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of watching, and there was something in there that he found maybe credible, maybe something that aligned with a certain belief system you had or whatever it may have you. But I don't think it was meant to be. I don't think it's coming from a hateful place at all. As much as I dislike the man, I don't necessarily believe it was coming from a place of hatred or disdain or vitriol or anything of that nature. I'll give him that much. I think it was far more educated than anything Kanye has said about the situation.
I honestly don't think those two things were related. I also don't have a disdain for Kyrie Irving. I think he's a good dude. I don't have any negative things to say about him whatsoever. I do believe I do believe that posting the Hebrews to Negro ad is no different than posting Squid Games, because Squid Games like was like one of the best accidental TV shows that came out on Netflix. And I think and the thing about it is let's look at the two different variables. You have one movie that's telling you that that black people whose history been taken away actually have a history, and where this history is going and where this history came from, versus a movie that shows that's about people who can't stop gambling, and that they're going to put themselves in an even worse position to gamble and lose their lives if they lose. So, which is a worse type situation, But one is considered fun, and one is considered, hateful.
I mean, I think that just boils down to the fact that one is there for purely entertainment. And again, however you receive that, not everybody considers that kind of content entertaining. I know plenty of people who find it off-putting, to say the least. But again, if we're just talking about how things are received in society nowadays, I think that's where the discernible line is drawn, is that one would be considered entertainment, again, by the masses. However, whatever way you feel personally isn't really the crux of it. It's just what's
Me, I like both.
accepted.
I like
And the
both
other
genres.
one would be considered more, right. And you can enjoy both, and you can appreciate both, and you can receive both. It's when people start expressing their opinions on said things, it's coming from a much different place. When you're saying like, oh, like everybody asks like, oh, the what if question. I think everybody's significant others hit them with the what if. Oh, babe, what if I did this? Or what if you were in this situation? Or what if I walked in and saw you? You can have that conversation, and it's pretty much a benign conversation. It's a funny what if, whatever. But when you start having a conversation about a medium like from Negroes to Jews, it's not really ever going to come from a jovial place. It's going to come from a place where the conversation is going to get deep. It might get heated depending on which, side of the spectrum you are on as far as your belief system. So I think that's kind of where that line is drawn. Now, again, I've got no skin in that game personally, but that's just my outside observation of it all.
When it comes to that what if question, if you're the male in the relationship and you get hit with that what if question, they ask you anything, you just your whole answer has to be,
Like, babe, whatever makes you happy.
listen, yeah, whatever you say happens is the right thing. That's it. But what if I caught you doing this? I'd be like, you would never catch me doing that. Oh, so you're saying you're never going to do it?
What if you walked in and I was cheating on you? Like, babe, obviously I would forgive you because you're the best thing that ever happened to me. That's the only answer you can say in that situation, obviously.
You got to be like, I would die before I would do that. I would have a stroke and die before I do it. That's it.
But with that stuff said, guys, gotta wrap it up. But I definitely think you guys definitely brought up some interesting points, and I do agree with some of them. As far as, what's going on with Kanye, at this point, we just got to wait and see, Because I don't think he's canceled. As people want to say he is, he's not canceled. We're still talking about him. Trust me, he's going to come back. But with that said, everybody, you let us know.
Hope the good music comes back, too.
You guys let us know your thoughts, what's your take on it. Once again, we're not trying to spew any hate or anything. If anything, we're just speaking from an observational standpoint of how it looks to us. So if you're someone that's of the Jewish community or religion, I don't want you to come across this and feel you gotta like attack us, because for what? We're just speaking on what we're seeing. Anyways, with that said, guys, Mike, please let people know where they could find you on social media, any handles that you want people to follow you at.
I don't really rock heavy with too many social media. I have a dedicated Facebook that I post a lot of fuckery on for the sake of pure entertainment. Yeah, Michael Kanye Carlo Gonzalez is where I can find me at. Again, why he asked me to talk about Kanye, I took the man's name.
That's pretty deep.
There you go.
It's pretty deep.
JP, do you want to let people know where they can find you in your work?
Mainsink, which is spelled MAINSINK, at every place. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Facebook. You're not going to see crazy shit. You're only going to see artwork, because that's what I do. I just do a lot of illustrations. And that's it.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys once again for joining me on today's episode.
Absolutely.
Appreciate having you guys on.
Yes, sir.
You guys already know where you can find me and all my work on thisisceo.com. You can find everything there. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Deuces.
Peace.